Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. In this video, I just wanted to quickly go through some of the content that we have for this next week in our course, looking at productive online interactions as well as how we can have students demonstrate their learning. So those will be the first two kind of things that we talk about, and then we're going to get into some housekeeping for a little bit, talk about kind of the rest of the semester, and then I want to overview 2 assignments, discussion 3, and then our digital citizenship project that we're going to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with preparing students for productive online interactions. Okay, so we live in a world where we have access to all kinds of digital technologies and media, and we can't really escape it. And kids are using it today, and they're using all different kinds of social media every day. And even some of the kids that you were teaching at Jolly are on social media, whether it's YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, or something else. They're interacting with it, and they're interacting with it at a younger age all the time. So it's probably a good idea to think about how can we prepare them to, have a productive experience online. Okay. Now, in a traditional approach to digital citizenship curriculum, really social media is framed as this really bad thing, this taboo thing, something that we really shouldn't be spending a lot of time on. And it's really meant more for adults or at least older children, right? But the interesting thing is that when we look at social media, a lot of times the people that are using it maybe in the more negative ways are typically adults. It's not always students that are using these things in negative ways. And really, when we think about how we prepare students to use social media, we really focus on the bad things, never really the good things that can happen. Such as like right now, a lot of people live by themselves and they're using social media to stay connected when they can't actually physically go and interact with people every day. So there's all kinds of things that we can do that are positive using social media. But we typically don't really help students understand that and how to interact in positive ways through these mediums. And as a result, what happens is we're not really fostering this awareness of what's good or what's bad or what's right or what's wrong. And that's really a major focus area of participatory digital citizenship curriculum, where we're really looking at having this conversation with students about, what's the difference between right and wrong in these online social spaces, and really thinking through how can you create your own supportive community through whatever social networking devices that you want to use, whether it's a Facebook account or Twitter, Instagram, whatever it might be. How can you create these communities that really support your overall well-being? Because a lot of times we have a lot of people that have these social networks created where they have people that really don't contribute positively to their overall well-being, and that's something we should work on trying to change. And then another major part that we're really looking at doing with this participatory approach is how can we help students respond in positive ways too? And really we're focused on this idea of empowerment. Because when we look at the traditional approaches that we have been kind of studying over the last couple of weeks, I think it was last week where we look at the students are typically in kind of this powerless position where they have to go find an adult to actually help them out with whatever issue that they're running into, because that's all that you can have, right? With digital technologies, some kind of issue that students run into. And that's not always the case. And it's not always the case that an adult has to come in and help students solve whatever problem or issue that they've encountered, right? And a lot of times we should really focus on how can we empower students that when they see something, they say something or they do something that really resolves their issue, where they don't have to rely on others. That's really what our goal should be. And yes, sometimes we will have to report these things that happen, some of these things that are kind of negative, that are maybe beyond the scope of what a child can do at their age, and that's okay. Sometimes adults can be, useful, helpful. But reporting shouldn't be the first step that students take. It should really be one of the last steps that they take. Okay. Now, as we look at how do we do this within an actual classroom, it's really you start with this discussion, right? We have this trajectory that we can kind of follow, and really start with a discussion about kind of those things that I just talked about, right? What's right and wrong? How can you create these networks that are actually positive and help you kind of be this well-rounded person? And how do you respond when bad things happen? And then it's just like what the books are talking about. You create these spaces and you model the use within your own classroom. That way they have an idea of what's acceptable, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. And then over time, you start giving them some kind of guided practice, typically through assignments that they do, and you give them more and more responsibility over time. And eventually you've empowered them over, a period of, several months, several years, something like that. And they're able to go out and live a really enriching life using social media. Okay. Now, the key part of this is that guided practice piece. And that's where we transition to some of the content from the Clark book for this week. Okay. Now, in the Clark book, she dedicates a huge chunk of her book to how students can demonstrate their learning using digital technologies and media. Now, typically when we think about how students demonstrate their learning, it's typically through a test, right? Something like this. But what we feel to kind of think about sometimes is that there's more ways to show our understanding than what's on the test, right? And there's this great quote on one of the pages in our book from McTighe and Wiggins, and they do a lot of stuff with what students understand and how we can kind of design learning environments that support the transfer of understanding. And they said that understanding is revealed when students make sense of and transfer their learning through authentic performance. And that's really what we should be striving to create in our classrooms using these technologies. We have all these things that are available to us. So how can we use them to help students demonstrate in a new situation that's maybe a little bit more authentic than a test? To show us what they know, okay? So the big question that then emerges here is, well, how can we engage students in an authentic performance, right? And lucky for us, Holly Clark has kind of taken some of the legwork out for us, right? She has at least 11 different things that we can do, and she lists different technologies we can use that can get students demonstrating their learning more authentic ways, okay? Things like creating ebooks or visual storytelling, which we've called digital storytelling, or podcasting, or blogging, or doing some kind of collaborative work with their peers, or reflecting on what they're doing, digital portfolios, all kinds of different things that we can do, okay? And she dedicates just a large portion, I think it's like 70 some pages in her book that she dedicates to this kind of stuff. And this is like kind of like a gold mine for teachers, because it really gives you all these different types of examples. Because sometimes the hardest part of knowing what to do in the classroom using technologies is just what's out there. So she's kind of doing some of that hard work for us. And that's what you'll be reading about this week. I could lecture about it, but it's probably going to be a 2-hour long lecture and no one wants to sit for that long. So what we're going to do next is we're going to just go through some of the housekeeping things that we're going to be doing over the next, I think we have about 4 weeks of classes left before we break for the semester. So let's talk about some of that stuff. And first up is, what are we doing for the next couple weeks? So what I've done is I have grouped the content for the next 2 weeks together into kind of one, think of it as kind of like one unit, if you will. It seems like we've been moving at a pretty steady pace for the last couple of weeks since we've transitioned to this kind of online remote learning thing that we're doing, and everyone's been doing a great job. So I thought, why don't we take a step back, because we have really had a lot of change in the last couple of weeks. So we should really think about, well, how can we do this a little bit different maybe? That way we all can have a little bit of a break. 'Cause I'm sure, I know I'm feeling overwhelmed with different things that are going on in my life, especially trying to do it remotely. And I'm sure you all are experiencing the same things. So kind of give us a little bit of a mental break while still trying to move forward with the class. Okay. So for the next 2 weeks, so starting today, April 6th through April 19th, I want you to read Matson chapter 4 and then Clark pages 47 through 111. Okay, and then we have our third discussion, which I'll talk about here in a minute, but your first post for that will be due on this coming Wednesday, April 8th, and then it will end on the 19th. And that's really all we have slated for the next 2 weeks. Okay, so let's talk about discussion 3 real quick. So discussion 3 is going to be this 2-week discussion, just like I mentioned. And by this first Wednesday, what I want you to do is I want you to pick a technology that you would like to explore. Like I said, in our Clark book, she has talked about a ton of different technologies and things you can do with them. So I want you to kind of do a little bit deeper dive and pick a technology that you'd like to explore. So what I've basically done here is resurrected our emerging technology presentations that we were going to do as a group, and I've kind of modified it a little bit so that you can do it more independently. That's really what this discussion is, more of an activity, is the way I'm trying to think of it. But this is what we're going to be doing over the next 2 weeks. So you're going to pick technology, and you can pick anything out of the Clark book. You can also pick something else that you might just have an interest in that you've seen. You can email me and get approval for that. But the idea here is that I don't want you to have any duplicates with the other people in your discussion group. Now, speaking of discussion groups, I have created new discussion groups for this discussion so that you have more people in your group. That way you can be exposed to more technologies through this activity, so that there will be 2 discussion groups. So it's going to be 2 groups of 8. So make sure you don't have any duplicates, and then just pick a technology by the 8th. Okay, and then by the end of the discussion, what I really want you to do is to just make one single post where you describe the technology. Okay, so you're gonna have to do a little bit of legwork, and I describe exactly what you need to do in the discussion area in D2L, so you can get more, but these are kind of the highlights here. So you're gonna describe the technology and kind of what it does and how it works. You'll come up with 2 instructional uses for the technology. Okay, so how could you use this during instruction? And more specifically, how could your students use it? I want you to share an example of what students could do using the technology. So if you say did something with Canva, that was a technology you picked, and you're going to say, hey, we can create a poster, go ahead and create a poster on some kind of content related topic for a grade level. Okay, it doesn't matter what grade level it is, just pick a grade level and create something with it. Okay, that way we have this model of what it can do. And then I have, I think, 4 evaluation questions that I want you to respond to that really evaluate the use of the technology. Okay, so that's what the third discussion is. So it's not so much of a discussion, it's really just like an activity that we're going to do through the discussions. But I put it in discussions just because it seemed easier and made more sense that way. Okay. Now, I also want to take a couple minutes to talk about our digital citizenship project. We haven't talked a whole lot about this, and this is an assignment that we have added to the course. We added it in response to, having to get rid of lesson plan 4 and some of the things that we were going to do in the classroom. So what this assignment is going to be is it's a 20-point assignment. It's really due at the very end of the semester. So you have until May 1st to get this done, and there's really 3 major areas that you're going to be doing. Okay. First, you're going to create a digital learning environment for elementary or middle school students. Now, obviously, we will not use this with elementary or middle school students because we're not teaching any right now, but it's something that you could create and use with elementary or middle school students. And then you're going to go ahead and create 2 activities that you would facilitate through that learning environment. Okay, so we still have a little bit of instructional design type stuff here. So we're still kind of aligned with what we were doing with lesson plan 4. Okay, and then you're going to write a very brief reflection at the very end. Okay, kind of focused on your implementation of, or how you would implement this digital learning environment. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper in kind of each of these parts. So overall, I'm putting you in the scenario where you're a teacher that needs to create this digital learning environment, very much like what teachers are finding themselves in the position of today. So kind of building off some of the things that we've been doing in the first couple discussions that we've done since spring break. And really what I want you to do is I want you to select a developmentally appropriate platform that you could use with a grade level, right? You're going to tell me what grade level you're working with. So maybe it's 5th grade. And then you're going to pick some kind of platform, say Google Classroom, that you would use. Now, I have developmentally appropriate in there. And what I mean by that is that the students at your grade level can easily use this platform, this technology, with minimal support from anybody else. Okay, you give them a little bit of support at the front end, but then they can more or less, once they kind of get to know it, how to use it, do it by themselves. Okay, so for example, what you use with, say, a 1st grade classroom is going to be completely different than what you'd use in a 7th or 8th grade classroom. Okay, so you want to think about your audience a little bit. Think about the students that you'd be using and pick something that would be appropriate. And if you have questions on that, you just gotta let me know and we can go through it together. Okay, now the next step is you need to add a welcome message. And this doesn't have to be very long. The main goal here is that you're going to explain to your kind of hypothetical students how to navigate this environment that you've created for them. Okay, and really how to navigate to the activities that you're going to create. Okay. So you're going to do a little pretending here as you write this, and that's okay. You can think of kind of the students that you taught at Jolly this semester and how you would explain it, how to use your environment to them, okay? Then you have to plan 2 activities, and I'm looking for clear instructions and some kind of content focus, so giving you a lot of flexibility here. The requirements that I have are that 1 activity requires students to demonstrate learning, so kind of connecting to those ideas from the Clark book. Okay, so they have to demonstrate their learning in some way, and you can use the ideas from Clark, or you can use your own ideas, but the idea is that they're demonstrating their understanding, okay? They're demonstrating their understanding of the content focus for the activity, okay? So that's 1 activity, and then the other activity should engage students in dialogue. Now, from the Matson book, we learned that dialogue is a mix of consuming and contributing in an online space. So how are you gonna do that is really the idea here, and then put that together for me, okay? And then the last piece I have, you just writing a very brief reflection paper on how you would implement this if you were actually going to use it. I believe there are 4 questions, and I want like about a paragraph to 2 paragraphs per question, okay? So that's the Digital Citizenship Project. It's kind of open-ended. It lets you be creative. I'm excited to see what you come up with, okay? And then the last thing I want to talk about real quick is looking forward. Okay, so we are about a month out from the semester ending. And I kind of talked about what we're doing for the next 2 weeks. So let's start looking at the week of April 20th. We're going to wrap up our Matson book, wrap up the readings for the semester. We have chapters 5 and 6 that you have to read. We will not have a discussion that week. I think with this last discussion, that's going to be all we're going to do, because I'm ready for you to transition to wrapping up the assignments that we have left this semester. Okay, so on the 21st of April, you need to have your PLN project done. That's kind of one of the first major ones that you have to have done. And then on the week of April 27th, it's going to primarily be a work week for you. I'll create a video and I'll talk about the final exam that week, and then open that up so you can start taking that anytime. And then you'll have to work on your digital citizenship project, which will be due on May 1st. Now, I also have that program survey 2 in there, which we will still do. I'll have the link to that on the 27th available for you. So you can go in there. It'll take you 20 minutes to do. It's a pretty quick one, and that's due on May 1st as well. Okay. And then we have finals week, and our final will be an online final exam, very much like our midterm exam that we did through D2L. So I'll have that, and our final exam time slot was scheduled from 3 to 5 on May 5th. So we are just going to stick with that, except you can do it anytime. It's going to be open book, very much just like our midterm. And I'll provide more details on that, but it will be due May 5th at 5 p.m. Okay. So that's where we are. That's where we're going. We're getting to that point where we're wrapping up things for the semester. So if you have questions, you just need to let me know. You can always email me. You can post your question in the Ask Dr. Emma question discussion thread, or you can attend our online office half hour. Okay. So with that, I will let you go, and I will see you online over the next couple of weeks. Thanks.